Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Cruz.
This is Bryce Vine.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This
East.
is Sebastian Younger.
This is Daryl Ames.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
This is Dr. Bob Greenberg.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
Sam Al Helli, Big Sam, Break It Down Show.
And now, the Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Oh, that was terrible.
That was horrible.
That was horrible.
Hey, this is Big Sam Helli. You're listening to the Break It Down Show. That's all you got to do.
Hey, this is Sam Al Helli. Listen to Break It Down Show. Hey, this is Sam Al Helli, Big Sam, and you are listening to Break It Down Show.
Yes, we're at the Huesing Dojo off in the office.
Yes.
Scott's sitting here, and actually we've got Phil in the house too, so he may chime in. We've got a brand new American, but also a birthday boy sitting with us, and this is fantastic. You were from Iraq.
Yes, sir.
We're going to have you talk in a second. Let me introduce who you are. You were an interpreter in Scott's unit, and you also, turns out you and I worked in the same area and clearly in the same units. So we've all worked a lot of the same ground, and that's super fantastic to have you in here. I love when I get to meet brand new Americans. It's my favorite thing. That's what makes this country great is people want to come here and build something big. So you're a Big Sam, and I love that you're here. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you for having us here. And thank you, my fellow American.
That sounds good. That never gets old hearing that.
Yeah.
It really is like a super American success story. And we were just kind of busting Sam's balls before the show and telling Phil a little bit about Sam and how he was probably 40 pounds less. He was an 18-year-old skinny Iraqi who'd risked everything to join the coalition and help us speak the language. That's how we got introduced back in 2006, 2007, when our company fought in Iraq as we moved around. And since then, it's the rest is history. But you tell this story about how you made it over here to America, how that whole process worked.
I applied for a special immigrant visa. It's a program for people who work on behalf of the United States government in Iraq and Afghanistan. And, of course, I went through the background check and all, and it took me about a year and a half with help from Major Asmussen, Bam Bam, and a U.S. congressman that helped me move to the U.S. in 2012. And the reason why I moved to the U.S. is working for the American troops for 3 years, it really didn't put me in a safe position. I got threatened a few times. People calling me traitor, disloyal for working with Americans. And I picked up a lot of things from working with Americans, work ethics. I wanted to change my life. And then that's why I decided to move to the U.S. And I moved to the U.S. in 2012. And last June, I became American citizen.
That's an incredible story. And I want to ask you, well, one, let me set the stage a little bit for the audience because they don't understand what it means to be who you were. Where I was up in Mosul in particular, it got really bad in 2004, post-elections especially bad, where there'd be Iraqis in a ditch with no head all the time. If they could identify that you worked with the Americans, if you weren't part of the group, you were going to lose your head, at least get your neck cut open, and quite possibly and probably people in your family would get what called night letters. And a night letter basically is quit doing what you're doing or we're going to come kill you and your family. That's one thing here in America where you might get that and you're like, they're just blowing the steam. But where you're at, people are actually getting killed.
In my case, the reason is why I actually started working interpreter back in 2006. During the Civil War, when it started in Iraq, we got a letter from a terrorist dropped at our gate. And one morning I was going to school, and I opened the front gate, and I saw that letter, and I opened it up, and it was saying, infidels, you got 24 hours to leave, otherwise you'll be beheaded. And with that envelope, there was a round bullet inside of it. So it was a serious threat. My dad actually didn't believe it because he believed in United Iraq. There is no civil war. It's not going to happen no matter what. But we started talking to our other neighbors, and they had the same thing. And we heard that some people actually got killed. So that point, we had to leave our house, and my dad owned other properties in the same neighborhood. So we just had to get in the car, pick up whatever we can, and then we left pretty much everything behind. And we thought it's a matter of time, a week or two, and then we'll be back home. But it wasn't. It took years. And after a few weeks, I just couldn't, like, we lived in a big house. It used to be called a castle in my neighborhood. And then luckily my dad owned an apartment building in another neighborhood. We moved there, and we didn't have furniture. We didn't have anything. So I couldn't take living and having a good life, a spoiled life, and then having nothing. I couldn't watch my dad struggling, my sister struggling. And I talked with my friend, and my friend, he advised that he had the same thing. His family got displaced, and he advised, like, let's work for the Americans. You know, the Americans have the same enemy that we have, which is Al-Qaeda, the terrorists. We want to clean up our country. And to me, it sounded like a good idea. You know, revenge, yeah, like, it's a bad thing, but at that time, it made sense to me. And at the same time, I can make some money, help my family, and help my country clean it up from the terrorists, because this is my country, and this is the only solution, is to bring it back as it should be, in a good condition. And the only way is to get back to our houses is getting rid of the terrorists. It wasn't the Americans. The Americans are not the ones who lived in my house. It was Al-Qaeda. It was the terrorists who loved that note, and we got displaced because of them. And so that's when I talked with my dad that I signed up without telling anyone in my family. I signed up with an American company as a contractor, and 2 days, they gave me 2 days. They were like, hey, you have 2 days and you should come to IZ, international zone, and then you will fly out to Camp al-Assad in west of Iraq. And so I had only 2 days, and I haven't told anybody.
Yeah.
Okay, no family, not my mom, dad, nobody except my friend. He knows about it, and we had to tell somebody. So I broke it down to my dad, and I still remember that moment. I would never ever forget it. Like, happened yesterday to me. I was driving, and my dad was sitting in the passenger seat, and I just told him, like, Dad, listen, I'm gonna work as interpreter with the Americans, and I'm leaving day after tomorrow. And I signed a contract, and I'm leaving. My dad, he thought that I was just talking crazy, like I wasn't serious. I was just pissed about the terrorists and all. And he was like, you sure? What are you talking about? Because I have some other family relatives who did the same thing a year before 2006. In 2005, they were kidnapped, raped, and murdered.
Yeah, we got to put that in perspective too. Is, for any listeners that think that, and many have tuned into the show before and heard other Terps that have been on the show, and that's what we called Sam and other guys were Terps. That was the nickname we called most of the interpreters. But this is not urban legend that we're talking about. This is what happened. This is daily life, and I think the only way that the average American or listener to this program can really relate that is some sort of gangland activity where there's a really heavy criminal element. And to be an interpreter embedded with the U.S. forces is tantamount to as dangerous as being an undercover DEA agent or an undercover cop, and you get exposed, and they find out where you live, and they come, and you're done. I mean, it was literally that dangerous for these guys. And when we're not talking about federal agents that go through, FLETC in Glencoe, Georgia, or an academy. We're talking to this kid that I again knew as an 18-year-old kid, who was trying to get his education. He was in college already, and he sacrificed all that because he took up our cause, and his own, to really do whatever he could to regain some sort of civility and respect that his family had earned for his whole life, and all of that was wiped away. And so it's really important that listeners understand this is not something guys sit around and we haven't been drinking tonight and we're not exaggerating the facts. This is and all of these things are events that we witnessed firsthand day in and day out over this long war, both in Iraq and the same things were happening in Afghanistan for the Terps that served over there.
Yeah, the thing, if you're to understand what it is to be Sam's family, you guys have some money, you have some security. Now, if that stuff was gone, if your dad was a simpler guy who's a farmer or something like that, you really have to go find some family that lives far away, or you're going to move to Syria. So whatever your life is now, whatever money you have coming in, that's all gone. And you can choose to stay, but I'm here to tell you, I've talked to a lot of families too, and there's always one burned out home in the town that sends the message for everybody else that thinks, oh, we're just going to stick this out. Like, no, you're not. Your whole life has changed. And a lot of the dads got killed. So now you have a society that has to have men. And because if not, the women, frankly, are whores. You know, like the wife of the husband that's dead, she's got to now go live with that guy's brother, and he may not have the ability to take care of that family. So Sam's fortunate to have a family that he could go to a dad and say, here's what I want to do. Her families are even worse off than that. So you decide to make this decision to go and sign up, do the contract, and you, in effect, are going to be in a military unit going out on patrols every day. I mean, you don't know.
Again, with zero training.
Zero training, right. And really zero gear. Did you know you were going to have any gear or anything? Or like, I got these tan trousers and this nice blazer. I'm going to sit in the office somewhere. And
what did you show up in? I mean, like, when we joined the military, we all show up in, like, khaki slacks and, like, a collared shirt, and then they make you throw it in a cardboard box. What did you show up with when you left that day, before you got on the Black Hawk out of, like, LZ Washington or wherever they flew out of?
I still remember what I exactly was wearing. I was wearing a sweater and a jeans and like training shoes too. And they, like, when we got to Camp al-Assad, they were like, what are you wearing? They were sending me to Haditha for an assignment.
Who's this dork?
Yeah, like what are you wearing? You gotta shave your beard. You have to look like us. And they literally gave me like the flak jacket and the boots and the helmet. I didn't know how to use it. I didn't know how to put it on.
Could you even grow a beard back then? I mean, you were like just barely turned 18.
Just a few hairs. It's not like cool like my beard.
Now he's got like this uber sexy GQ-esque, and he I'll throw Sam under the bus a little bit because we've known each other for a long time, but he does pride himself on, as he told me earlier, super photogenic, and he's done some minor modeling stuff, I think, on the side that he won't admit to.
Yeah.
So, but he's grown into his own element for sure.
You're like the Arab Burt Reynolds, the young Burt Reynolds.
I'll take the Arab.
Have you seen the American movie Smokey and the Bandit?
I don't think so.
Yeah, it's a glad we got to get you locked onto that one.
So
So Pete, you talked about the draw. Like, what was the money like in comparison? So the contract company, which you don't have to name, there were several of them over there. But what was the money like? Was that kind of a draw for you? I mean, I know your whole story. I wrote about it in the book, but there's a whole chapter just about you and Ford, who was your best friend that you grew up with, both who were my Terps. I think Ford was the one, really the tipping point that sucked you back in, because you kind of told him to F off. You're like, yeah, I'm not doing this. And then he roped you in. And I'm sure you said, hey, they're going to pay us a bunch of money. And I don't know what the money was like. I think you told me at one point, but tell the listeners like what the money was like, and then in comparison, like what the average Iraqi was making.
Well, the monthly salary was about $1,100. It depends on what location they send you. Like for the hot zones, Haditha, Ramadi, Fallujah, they give you another $200 or $300. But at the same time, like for like me and Ford and other interpreters, I've never been in the military. I've never held a gun before. And then when I got there, they gave me all this gear, and they were like, "Hey, let's roll.
Good luck with that."
Yeah, let's start patrolling. And some of some companies that I work for, some units, they give me guns, and I was like, I don't even know how to use it. And they literally told me, this is how you pull the trigger, and this is how you charge it. Just shoot it, point it at the bad guy, not us. Just make sure that you don't point the gun at us. So I didn't really have any training, any background training. So it was pretty difficult for me and for the other interpreters. The money factor, risking our lives. We didn't have any kind of benefits. If we die, like the question that I had, and every time we get a gunfight or we get hit by IED or I hear a sniper shot, was the first question that pops in my head. And the most important question was, how my family gonna say I died? Are they gonna be able to say that I died while I was working with Americans? Are they gonna be proud of me? Because they really can't. And the only person who knew what I was doing was my dad, because I couldn't share it with my mom because, me losing 3 cousins as interpreters before, it's not gonna make my mom. It's gonna make her very, very worried about me. So I didn't want to have her that. I didn't want to make her worried about me, so I just told her that I was working in north of Iraq in Sulaymaniyah in a pretty safe oil company. Like, I'm not working with Americans.
So similar to the U.S. Marine or soldier who lies to his parents about joining the military and says, oh, yeah, I'm going to be an administrative cleric or I'm going to be in motor T. I won't ever be on the front lines, and they know full well they've signed up for the infantry. Totally lied to mom and dad and kind of sneak off. But yeah, so you're making like $1,200 a month. So again, put it in perspective. Like, what job in America do you make $1,200 a month where you would be willing to risk your life, go out, get engaged by an unknown, elusive enemy insurgent force on a daily basis, walking down roads that are laden with improvised explosive devices, and just hang it all out there? I mean, there isn't a job like that.
Yeah, in a lot of cases, like in a mounted patrol, you're in a bunch of up-armored vehicles, and you're relatively safe because you've got big weapons and a whole lot of armor. And they're like, everybody get out, and Sam's one of the guys that gets out.
He's the first to get out because without him on point, we just couldn't engage with the locals. I mean, that was the immense skill set that he brought to the table. And I've told this story many times, but I was what I like to refer to as a Terp lover. Like, I love the Terps. Like, I loved having them in the unit. I loved the capability they brought, and they were in such high demand. There just weren't enough Terps to go around. And I'm sure there were other units, and I heard squabble about, the Iraqis, they're trying to embed in the units and gather information and pass it off to, Al-Qaeda in Iraq, which I'm sure happened, and there's documented cases that did happen. But for the most part, again, I realized early on that these guys were invaluable. I mean, I'd already been in combat and worked with the Terps on several occasions in deployments. But, and the Marines, too, I think they subscribed to that same philosophy as well, and they treated them like gold.
Yeah, I always defended my interpreters. And you know how it is. All those guys that are negative and like, Sam has to have his badge out at all times. Well, sometimes Sam doesn't have his fucking badge. Sometimes the badge is turned around. And there's some
What's
guy.
What's a badge?
Yeah, right. Well, I'm talking on the big camps. But, there'll be some guy that never goes out that's like, who's this guy? And they'll give you the business. And I always instructed all of my interpreters to just say yes, ask who they work for, and I'll handle the rest. Because then I would go shake them down. I'd go see the boss over there and be like, don't ever mess with my interpreter. Like, we go out every day. I need that guy straight so we can take care of the guys that are going out. And there's not a lot of people did that because usually there was the other way, like where you would get treated like crap. Did you get treated poorly by not the home unit, but the other units that were there with you?
Well, see, there's 2 kind of units that I worked with. There's the unit who was active. They loved interpreters. The reason why is because they can build a trust relationship with their interpreter. And the reason how they built that trust relationship is because they're an active unit, they are always in combat, they always see action. The interpreter with them, and they see that the interpreter, he's risking his own life, he's going the extra mile, he's searching with them, he's talking with people that the Marine or the other guy, he doesn't tell him like, hey, talk to that. He just do his work, and he do more than his work. And he keeps his eye on his team and on himself, on everybody. He protects everybody. When the unit sees the interpreter like that, they will trust him, and they will treat him as a king. Yeah. That's what happened with me with Echo Company 2-4, with Scott unit. I was with them all the time. I go out 4 or 5 times a day, and I've never complained. It was hot. It was almost 110 degrees, 105. With all the gear on, 3 or 4 times a day, we go each patrol, 3-4 hours patrol, and the food was terrible. We barely get showered.
Yeah.
I'm being honest.
Yeah, in addition to everything else, like the living conditions, there's no running plumbing. We're going to the bathroom in a tent with a garbage bag that has like kitty litter in it, the wag bag, and it was tough. And so, he'd go out on a patrol, and then the patrol would come back. They'd drop him off. He might jam some chow and a couple energy drinks or some water down, dig through the box of halal MREs, which did not exist. And then the other patrol would probably grab him and take him right back out. So he got no break. So in addition to being constantly exposed, even more so at times in the Marines, he had the fighting, the exhaustion, the fatigue. He had to work for me. So that in and of itself is added friction.
Let's
right
talk
there.
about that a little bit.
No,
Sam,
let's
out
not.
for a second, because it took me years to learn this. I had a lot of really good interpreters. I was excellent at getting up to speed, but it never occurred to me that when you're remote and really austere, that eating chow is hard for these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, we're going on every patrol we can. Every patrol, we're going to go out all the time, and then I'm going to extract everything else out of your head that's not in my notebook, and I'm going to work the fuck out of you because I'm there to solve a problem. It never even occurred to me that these guys were tired, that they were beat up and needed rest, that they needed some good chow, because you know how we are. Like, I'm just like, here's the job, and I'll be goddamned if I'm not going to go out and help, because someone might die if I don't. Were you like similar? I mean, obviously you're a commander, but not always. You did other jobs too, but how did you handle that stuff?
The stress and the fatigue, the human element always has to be factored in. And that's where you do get very focused sometimes, almost to a fault. And luckily for me, I had great guys around me. And that was always the secret of my success. I make no bones about it. The sergeants, the lieutenants, even the young Marines would always put me in check. And we had a great relationship where they would tell me those things, how the Marines were feeling, how the Terps were feeling, how the combat engineers were feeling, how the dogs were feeling, because we had military working dogs with us. They were always giving me that input so I could make a calculated decision. And it wasn't always the decision they wanted, but that's what was needed to accomplish the mission. And Sam was part of that to a large degree, because we spent weeks and months on end doing the same thing day in and day out. And after we cleared that sector of the city, it's like 72 hours or 96 hours, I think we cleared the city, established firm bases, and really stamped it clear. And at that point, we fell into that routine of daily patrols, running 9, 10, 12 patrols a day within our sector, in addition to the other Marine units that were around us. And there was a repetition and a boredom. We also lost Marines in the city due to sniper fire, which was obviously devastating, psychologically to the Marines, but also to these, young Iraqis who they don't know where the gunfire comes from. All they know is their fellow Marines got killed as well. And so I never thought about that. I never thought, how did it affect Sam? How did it affect Ford seeing one of my Marines get shot? But they were his Marines too. To this day, they all still rally around him and consider them, one of our own. I mean, to the degree where people should know, when I retired from the Marine Corps in 2013, Sam and Ford flew out from Chicago when they were living there for my retirement ceremony. That's how connected we grew during the worst times and remain connected to this day.
Give the audience an idea how many hours in a day, not a crazy day, just a regular hard Marine day. How many hours are you guys working?
We're up 20 hours a day, at least. That's you probably slept less than most. 3-4 hours a day was a luxury. If
you're humping in 100+ degree heat, tons of gear.
And 60 pounds of body armor, ammo, water, and we were foot mobile for the most part, pretty much the entire time, because our area was pretty densely populated, and it was very urban. It was all houses. Imagine like any semblance you can think of like tract housing, where they just build up these massive houses. And that's what it was like in the cities we fought. This cinder block landscape that all the houses looked the same. You never knew what was coming around any corner. You never knew if they were friendly, if they were enemy. We'd go in, we'd clear houses, and I think I've used this analogy before, but it was like a bad episode of Cops when that show was on. Is if Americans could think you're sleeping at 3 a.m. and then all of a sudden Marines just rush in and ransack your house, usher you into another room. They're like, Phil, you and your family get in there and hunker down. We're going to clear your entire house. And sometimes we'd find weapons. Sometimes we'd find contraband. Sometimes we'd find bad guys. But most of the time, if we did find bad guys, they were sleeping and it was kind of easy to roll them up. They were kind of lazy in that regard, I think. Like, they didn't like to fight at night. They wanted to get their sleep. And they took those key moments of opportunity to engage us. Most of the time was during the day. I think when we fought together, when we pushed west, most of the time was daytime engagements, but we cleared all night long.
Exactly.
We owned the night with our technology, the thermal optics and night vision goggles. So we patrolled exclusively at night. But then once we cleared the city, we also did daytime patrols. And every time we did daytime patrols, we'd normally get shot at. I would. I don't know if it was because Sam was standing next to me.
Probably.
The radio operator was standing next to me, or they knew who I was, and they're like, that's the guy. But the Marines seemed to kind of rally around it and bitch and moan a little bit about it, like, oh, great, the CO is coming out on patrol with us. We were definitely going to get shot at. So they kind of enjoyed the romance of that. I did not. It wore off when I was a young Lance Corporal. So, but
What's a hard day, Sam?
The hardest day was when you're in a gunfight and you really don't know if you're going to live the next minute. And the cool thing about the Marines, I remember one incident that we were ambushed. It was a heavy gunfight, and I literally broke down, and I was like, I'm going to die. I'm not going to see my parents anymore. I'm not going to see my siblings anymore. And one of the Marines, and I was we were fighting, right? But I didn't have a gun. I had a pistol with me, but I didn't use it. And one of the guys, he looked at me and he was like, hey, if you're going to die, at least you're going to die with a good company here.
See?
Yeah, so he really, put a smile on my face. I was like, you know what? You're totally right. Let's kill those mofos.
Yeah.
Let's get home. Let's get back to the base. Yeah. So that was like the hardest day is, the unknown thing, like what's going to happen, because I would go like how I'm going to go back home. That's like the most hardest thing for me in my head. How my family going to get me and what are they going to say? Are they going to say he was working with Americans killing terrorists, or are they not going to say that? Because if they say that, they're going to put themselves in danger too.
Yeah.
People will come after them and they were like, oh, this is the traitor's family. Let's go kill them. That's why I tried. I didn't tell, like for the whole time, for the 3 years that I worked, nobody knew except my dad. It's not that I didn't trust my family. I trust them with my life, of course. But people talk, people get worried, and sometimes it gets to the wrong person. People talk and it will get to the wrong person, and then it will just put them in danger. So it will be better off if, just keep it quiet. And
I always do a true confession with you, which normally Pete pimps me for. But I will say this. Here's a true confession I just thought of, is that back then, fighting under those conditions, I probably did view the interpreters, although they're people, as assets. And I never really took into account until you gain a little age and wisdom experience that those traumatic events absolutely impacted them. And Sam telling that last story about how he had to think about going back home to his family. What about those pieces of trauma that he accumulated, not just from my company, but the several companies that he worked for during his time as an interpreter in Iraq? How is he going to process those? How do the effects of post-traumatic stress impact those guys? And I was in Denver doing a book signing, and some guy popped up in the back with that very question, asking, well, what about all the Iraqis that saw these things, and what are we doing to help them with the effects of PTS? And I had to be quite honest and say, look, I'd love to be concerned with them, but I'm really concerned about my own tribe right now and my own military family here in America. But it's absolutely something that probably hasn't been given a lot of thought. And Sam's been back to Iraq since then and could probably speak to that network of people he worked with. They're probably all scattered out right now, but I don't think we've talked much about that. Although Sam has been at events for Save the Brave, he's volunteered at Mud Run to come out and help raise money for veterans of post-traumatic stress. But I think a lot of veterans don't ever think of the assets, the people that worked with us, and how that really impacted their lives, and still does to this day. It'd be probably worth $1 million for some dude with a PhD in his wall to go back and do a point paper on the number of Iraqis that committed suicide due to the effects of the war. I don't know. Do you have any info on that?
I don't really have any specific.
Do they care about that in Iraq? Do they think, oh, well, just go easy on him? He's got post-traumatic stress from the war.
We don't even have.
Do you get any benefits or anything?
No, not
Government
at all.
doesn't give you crap, do they?
Nothing.
They tell you to suck it up.
Give you a sack of Zoloft or something.
Well, are you talking about the Iraqi government or my government, the U.S. government?
Iraqi. Well played, fellow American. Well played. Touche. Throw a little French in there.
Yeah.
The Iraqi government, we don't, like back in Iraq, we don't acknowledge anything that called post-traumatic stress. There's no such
Why
thing.
not?
And
Culture?
just suck it up. Yeah,
It's culture. It's culturally not acceptable to be mentally weak.
Yeah.
Mentally weak people, we've seen how they treat them with, people that suffer from Down syndrome. I mean, we ran into that.
Yeah.
They're shackled in a basement. Literally. We ran into the Marines like, hey, sir, you got to get down here and see this. And we walk down the basement, clear this house, and there's a man in his 30s with Down syndrome, literally with a big link chain and a shackle around his ankle tied to the banister in the basement of this Iraqi home. And that's how they dealt with it.
And that's probably the safest place for him, because if he was anywhere else, he'd probably...
Well, they just don't really have institutions for that. Or
They don't.
And culturally.
They don't. And the health system in Iraq, it's really, really bad too. That's why most people who suffers from that, they just talk with each other, they talk with family. But lately, I've been watching on Facebook and on news, there's a lot of people are committing suicide, not only because of the war itself, but because of financial situation too, and jobs specifically. That the unemployment rate in Iraq, it's very, very high now. But here talking about our government here in the U.S., and about the interpreters who worked in Iraq with the American troops. When we got here, the only thing that we got here pretty much is like, here you go. This is a visa, immigration visa to the U.S.
This episode
complete
of the
5 years here in the U.S.
and by Lions Rock
if you
Productions.
don't do anything wrong, you'll be a U.S. citizen. And that's it. You don't get it. We didn't get any GI Bill or none of that. The only thing,
so if you're
I consider
your social media
like
presence,
the
your
U.S.
business,
Marines
your personal brand,
like
or
my
if you just wanna
family.
take your media
I always tell
presence to the next
people
level,
that I was born in Baghdad when I grew up with the U.S. Marines. Because that's, I think, before that I was a spoiled kid. Like my dad gave me the money and I didn't have to do anything. But with the Marines, when I started working with you guys, I really learned a lot of things, about being independent, about looking at things in a different way. And, like when you talk to people or when you see something, you look at the little things, the details, and then you make a conclusion about that person before you talk to them. So you would actually have an idea. Like, I learned a lot of things, and I'm pretty sure if I didn't do any of that, I mean, don't get me wrong, nobody like going into war. I wouldn't wish that to my worst enemy. But at the same time, it worked for me. And I think because for us as Iraqis, the PTS, it's a little bit less than the American troops, American personnel when they went to Iraq, is because we are in Iraq. I was born in a war, and I grew up during war and sanctions, and then I was back there the whole time, and then the invasion, 2003. I saw the whole thing. So me, when I started working as an interpreter, and we got in a gunfight, and I saw blood, saw dead bodies. It was traumatic. like sometimes I think about it deeply, and when I see myself going, I'm really going deep into it. I tell myself to stop and think about other things. So I kind of like block it, so it doesn't really affect me because I think because the way that I grew up and the country as a whole, it kind of prepared me when I started working as an interpreter. So that's why in Iraqis in general, it doesn't really affect them.
So there's two things that were kind of interesting that Sam was just talking about. Was you could relate it to the benefits that obviously they're not American military. They're not Americans at the time, but we have contractors that go over, they work for Triple Canopy or Aegis or Blackwater when they were still in existence, and they're covered under these health plans that they sign up, and they're making, these guys are making like $1,500 a day back in 2004 when I was in Baghdad before we even met. Just exorbitant amounts of money. So it was really worth it for them. They were risking something, but they're risking it for the cash reward as contractors, and they had those benefits. But again, there's no system even for people like Sam that go through this process, become American citizens legally, by the way, and it was 6 years to the day from the time he came over to the day that he was sworn in as an American citizen in Tampa, and I know that because I was there. I flew out for his swearing-in ceremony in Tampa, which is something I'd never done, and I was super proud to be there for him. But that whole process leading up to that, when he was saying the perseverance and things he learned from the U.S. military during that time, again, we started the show off with saying, I love to brag on him because it is an American success story, but not only did he, you can tell this story when I hand it back, is how you ultimately graduated college, but he graduates, does some more Turpin with other units, then gets his special immigrant visa, comes here, gets his master's degree, gets his MBA from Roosevelt, gets a degree, gets a certification IT. So he's like this IT guru sitting here with more degrees than I got hanging on any of my walls here.
Computer science masters.
Computer science masters. So he knows all about perseverance and putting in the work. But Sam was telling the story when we were at Building 500 when he had to come up. Tell that part of the story, because I know you love telling this. I don't tell this story.
And when I was working as an interpreter, during the first year, I had to stop going to school because I was going full-time and I couldn't take any time off. But I grew up in a family who really appreciates education. College was like number one thing to my parents, although my parents didn't even finish high school. So I wanted to not disappoint my parents and not myself too. So I was talking to some friends in college, and they were like, hey, the finals are coming and this is the date for the finals. We can help you with the learning materials so you can study for it and you can take the exam. And at the same time, while I was working with Echo Company 24 with Scott's unit, we were doing operations, and Scott's company, they really, needed the interpreters because they needed to talk to people. The U.S. troops' mission in Iraq wasn't killing people. It was rebuilding the country, talking to people. And the way to do that was through us, through the interpreters. But at the same time, I needed to go there, and because I would lose the whole year if I don't take the final exams. And the Iraq education system is different than here in the U.S. So if I don't do the final exams, I'll lose a whole academic year. So I spoke with Scott. I was like, sir, and Ford at the same time, my friend, he wanted to do the same thing, but I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. Well, I was like, I will do it. So I went to Scott. I was like, sir, this is the deal. I have final exams on this day. It was like 2 weeks from the day that I talked to him. And I know you really need me here. I know you got an operation here, but I want to go. And if you say no, I would understand,
So before that, this does take a lot of balls, because you know how the junior Marines are, young soldiers. They won't come up to the CO and just say, hey,
Terrified.
sir, first question was, hey, sir, can I borrow your satellite phone? So he wants to borrow like the only satellite phone in the entire company, like my personal satellite phone for emergencies. And I'm thinking, what the hell is he going to do with this phone? Who is he calling? Because even at that point, no one had ever asked me to use my phone, especially one of the Terps.
Right.
So I'm like, I don't know if this is cool, but I acquiesced. I gave him the phone. He stood right there and made a phone call, back to Baghdad, got the 411 on what was going on with the university, his finals, and then he pitches to me and says, I got to bust out of here and go take my finals.
Yeah, and then I asked him, I was like, otherwise I would be losing a year, and he was like, I don't really remember the exact word, but somewhere between, I don't want a stupid, ignorant mofo works for me. Go do your final exams, pass it, and come back to me.
Yeah, so I think he said he was going to be gone like 3 or 4 days, and again, I said, I want you to get your education, but you're really hamstringing the company because that put us down to one Terp for an entire company of over 250 Marines and soldiers. That's a lot of workload for Ford. I'm sure he was very happy for you to bail on us for almost a week. And I also told him I think something that if he didn't come back, I'd send the Marines to go looking for him if he left us in a lurch. Because my biggest concern was not his education. Another true confession on the Break It Down show.
Here we go.
Not his education, although I cared about him deeply. I was more concerned about the mission, which took priority over everything else. But true to his word, he busted over to Baghdad and then got back later that week. Told me he took all of his exams. I don't even think I asked him if he passed or not.
But
he
I
did.
passed.
Yeah, he passed.
Yeah, I had an interpreter or two along the way, and they would go to Baghdad University, and it always struck me as odd. Like, wait, you
don't go to school the whole year, but you go finals.
Well, but also like there's kids going to school. Like there's Iranians hiding bombs in trees, and you guys are kicking it at the student union. And yeah, same thing. They're like, I've got to take these tests, and I'm like, why are you still here? Like this is your country. You got to invest in it. We need you smart. See ya. Yeah. I had the luxury of doing that because I'm not in command of anything. You got my little mission and everything. But yeah, it's incredible to think about the things you guys had to deal with. Because not only, I'm going to get back to this part, but not only do you have to worry about your safety, and your buddy Ford who talks you into this, you guys are in this together, but also your family's safety, because if it gets out that you're doing this, if you're working in the same province that you live, if the clothes you wear, like, oh, that guy's Sunni, okay, and then they figure out that you're Jaburi or whatever it's going to be, all of a sudden, like, they can neck down to where you might be and maybe get after you. Because I've had this happen where the guy wore, like, members-only jackets. It's like, only these guys wear members-only jackets.
We did get Sam out of his sweater and jeans, though. He showed up in like camis, and he had flak jacket. I think he wore coveralls most of the time. But what's interesting about the whole thing, again, I love giving perspective to listeners, is just think about the logistics behind that. So this 18-year-old kid comes up, schedules this whole trip. He's got no car.
Yeah.
He's got no ride. It wasn't like his brother was outside like, hey, Sam, hop in. I'm going to drive you back to Baghdad, which is like a 3.5-hour drive from the western part of Anbar province to get back. It's even further than that, isn't it?
Yeah.
You flew back, though.
I flew back.
He flew back on one of the rotators. I wasn't like, hey, how are you getting back? How are you going to get there? I didn't do it. And he's an 18-year-old kid, and he worked out the entire logistics from the firm base, an active combat base in the heart of the city.
A firm base is where Marines are hanging out, like in someone's house, because they're not on a camp.
Right, because we don't plan on staying there for any extended period other than, a couple days, couple weeks, and then we hand it back over. But, yeah, so he sorted all that out on his own, and then gets back to the LZ, flies out, gets back to Baghdad, takes a test, makes it back. But, I mean, just to get from the firm base to the camp where he could catch a helicopter meant he had to talk to one of the sergeants and say, hey, can I get a ride back? And it's
you guys have to be the lowest priority,
it's a significant emotional event. I mean,
for sure. The other thing I wanted to ask is, okay, so Echo 2-4, Scott's unit, they're like, okay, we're leaving. See you, Big Sam. See you later. You're going to go work for the next company. Like, you're going to be doing the next thing and the next thing. It doesn't ever stop for you, Like that next day, you could be assigned to a new unit. It's like, oh, MPs, by the way, they go through the shittiest part of town every single day, and we need you in there talking to, a completely different mission. We're going to go talk to the Iraqi police every day and blend in. So how many different jobs did you have? How many different units do you think you served?
I really can't count them.
That's the other thing, that PTSD is like you just never quit. You just keep going.
Because you did it for 3 years straight.
I did it for 3 years, and Army units, Marines units, all of that.
That's equivalent to what we can remember from World War I, World War II, where there weren't 1 year deployments like in Vietnam or the 7-month deployments in Iraq or Afghanistan. He's off. He's gone from his family, and he's basically persona non grata in his hometown, Baghdad. He's gone for 3 years, day in and day. He's in war for 3 years straight. And they did give these guys leave. They could go back and do things. But a lot of the Terps didn't even take leave because if they went home, they'd get found out, and it was a greater risk for them for murder or intimidation and threats. So they just kind of sucked it up and fought day in and day out. It's just remarkable to think about it.
So you go on Friday, payday, whoop, whoop. You're not going to go to the titty club. So are they giving you cash? Okay, and let's ask Scott, how many ATMs? As a guy who went all over town, how many ATMs did you see?
0.
So how are they paying you? Because you're not getting direct deposit to your Iraqi bank account. Cash. Okay.
Cold, hard Iraqi
now you got
cash.
$1,100 in your pocket. You're going to keep some for walking around money, buying some falafel and everything. But what do you do with all that money?
Yeah, do they pay in Iraqi or U.S. dollars?
No, they pay in U.S. dollars.
Okay.
Speaking of that much cash and Ford, I remember one time we were in Haditha, I think it was December, in the desert. We were in a little base outside Haditha in the desert, and we were doing operations in the city itself. So me and Ford, we were in a little tent, December, in the desert. You can imagine how cold it was.
So cold.
It's extremely cold. We didn't really have enough clothes. It was so cold. So Ford, my best friend,
he was involved 2 dudes in a sleeping bag.
Well, that's how you get warm. That's how you get warm. Everybody does it. So Ford, we had in our pocket, in our wallet, like I think 3-4 months, more than 3 months, 5 months worth salary, cash in our pockets. And Ford, he got to the point where he said, I'm done. I'm going to quit. I can't take this life anymore. I can't live this life. I'm putting my life in danger. And if I don't die in action, I'm going to die freezing here. And then,
and you're walking around with like $6,000 cash in your pocket.
Yeah, we were literally
a couple of teenage retards walking around in Iraq with all this cash.
We were an American base with the U.S. Marines. We were with the U.S.
Did you spend any of it?
We didn't spend what?
You're like,
only the PX. Like that's the only place that you spend it.
I ate all the Funyuns. Like these Funyuns, holy fuck! I can't get enough of them.
No, MREs are the best.
Jesus Christ.
Free MREs.
Free MREs.
So Ford, he was...
Were you an apple stealer from the chow hall? You'd be like, take one of these apples, a couple of these muffins.
I was a good pit stealer.
Rip-It stealer. Rip-It is the lowest bidder equivalent of Red Bull for listeners. Actually, the reason they came in those small little cans was for shipping.
Oh, yeah? Is that why?
Yeah, that's why. A little trivia there.
They look like 6-ounce cans.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, so you guys got a bunch of money.
So we got a bunch of money, and Ford was crying, and he said, like, we're going to quit. I'm going to quit. I can't stay here. I want to go back to my family. So what I did is I took the whole cash out of my pocket, and I told him, like, look. And then I really went through the money, and I smelled it. And I was like, see all this cash? What the hell are your family going to do with you if you don't have that cash? So stay here, work more, do your job, make more money, and then you can help your family better.
Okay, so it's important to tell, too. Ford, high school best friends, they grew up, hang out, played soccer together, whatever teenagers do. Then they go through all of this together. Ford ropes Sam in. Sam talks him into staying in. Sam is the great American success story. But so is Ford because he's a U.S. citizen now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he got his citizenship before Sam did. And guess what he does now? He's a level 3 interpreter for a high government agency. So he went back as an interpreter after coming to America, goes to work for our government, his government, and now he's a senior level interpreter again.
What
still
that means
doing it
as a level 3
somewhere.
Top secret SCI means he's got a clearance and he's processing whatever comes across his desk. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah,
he's got benefits.
So I don't know if that makes him the smarter of the two or the bigger risk taker in the end, but
somebody decided to take education and
Yeah.
learn about computers, and somebody decided to make more money.
I want to add, so we've almost been at this for an hour, but I want to ask you a different question. You've been here, you understand America pretty well and everything, and you see all of this stuff with immigration and folks just walking across the border. Given what you went through to have the right to even apply, and I don't know if you had to, I know my buddy Spider didn't get to come over, and he had to give someone a bribe just to apply, in Iraq to come over here. What do you think about that, about folks that try to come? I mean, they're just as desperate, but what do you think? What are your thoughts?
Well, it's a pretty complicated topic, but for myself, me and other interpreters, we literally risked our lives. We put our lives on the line. We proved our loyalty to our country, America, and we went through the whole background process. Took years, and we've been here. I lived here 6 years, and I applied for the citizenship, and I got it. And the same day that I left Iraq, June 5, 2012, June 5, 2018, same day, same month, I got my U.S. citizenship. So the same day that I lost country, again, a new country. So about people who, doesn't matter what way, they crossed the border, they came through a boat or whatever. I think America was built 100 years ago through that. But different time, different place, it's different now. I think, America, it's a land of opportunities. Everybody should have an opportunity. But there should be a process to follow. Not anybody, they're like, okay, I want to live in America. It shouldn't be that way. You have to kind of, it's not just take, it's give and take. What are we willing to give here in order for you to take from here, from this country? So it's not only take, it's a give and take. So I don't, the way that people come here, I don't agree on most of it, but I think the way that our government now deals with it, I don't think it's the right way at the same time.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's do a comparison. Let's do rapid fire real quick. So,
Okay.
biggest thing you miss about Iraq?
Food.
I was
my
going to say
family.
Samoon or
Next
or
question,
Maskouf.
Pete.
Yes.
Next question.
Oh, shit, I thought you were going to ask all the questions. Yeah, okay. The thing you miss the most that's not food, like cultural things. TV, like watching Buka or whatever it is.
The most thing that I miss about Iraq is the social hangout. Yeah, that's the most thing that I miss about it.
What do you love most about America now that you're here?
The most thing I love about America is the law.
The law?
Yeah.
Not getting shot at every day. That's nice. That's a bonus.
When the Arab Cup is going on and Iraq has been eliminated, what country do you want to win?
Iraq. Oh, Iraq.
Yeah, they're eliminated,
okay.
yeah.
I would go with Egypt.
Okay.
Hottest women, Iraq, American.
Oh, God. Well, I'm American now, so.
It's not a trick question.
If we wanted to defeat Al Qaeda and we just installed a bunch of Hooters in like Karada and Baghdad and everything else, would that work?
Definitely.
I told you.
Definitely.
Hooters, Baghdad.
Yeah, Hooters in Baghdad. Trust me. All terrorists,
So
all
CEO of Hooters, if you're listening, you're missing out on a huge opportunity over
Win
there.
the war.
To win the war, you want to be the guy that single-handedly wins the war.
And then if you're one of those guys that has one of those small ATMs, Scott would suggest as well having some ATMs.
ATMs, I'm telling you, man, I've said this on a couple of shows, I think already, the DMV. As much as Americans say the DMV, no one has a license or any ID over there. It's just free for all. You don't know who anyone is.
Yeah.
It's like a bad library card at their lamination scheme. I've seen hall passes in high schools that look better, but yeah.
So you've gone. One of the things that native-born Americans lose sight of is just how great this country is, and this isn't like rah America thing. But we're awfully hard on ourselves. You know,
Sam's super rah-rah American. He picks up flags on the side of the road. He'll drive, back up his car. He sees an American flag, and he'll get out of his car and pick it up. That's how dear he holds our colors.
See, and this is
when 8,000 Americans have driven past it, Sam goes, he's done it like 4 or 5 times. He posted it on Facebook. I love it.
There's another story I haven't really shared. At a job that I had in the past 6 years, I'm not going to name the company or when, the company had a Canadian flag hanging on the wall in the office. Mm-hmm. And so it was an American company, and it was here in America. So I talked to my manager. I was like, hey, I don't really know why you guys have their Canadian flag here. I know they are one of our clients, but I think it would be appropriate if you hang American flag next to it, actually above it, because we're Americans and it's an American company and we are in America. And nobody, what was most shocking for me was none of my coworkers actually displayed any concern about not having an American flag. And then when I talked to my manager, I was like, I have nothing against Canada, but I think we are as Americans, as people who live here, and like you mentioned, the people who are trying to move here, and the risks that they take, and everybody, like me and the other immigrants who try to come here, we pay a lot to get here. We prove a lot to get here. So it's not cheap at all. And then I see Canadian flag hanging above my head in America. I didn't accept that. So the manager, they took it down. They took the Canadian flag.
Yeah. And then if you're going to do it to be like cool and even and Steve and everything, it goes American flag.
Oh, then Canadian flag.
Then the fucking Queen. And then the Canadian flag, because let's be honest, they're subservient to a sovereign.